Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The purpose of this video is to introduce you to glazing. Now, at this point in time, your teacher has already fired your pieces, and you're going to get them back, and they're going to kind of look like this. They're not gray anymore, they're white, and they look a lot different. You can have a specific sound, and they've gone into the kiln, they've undergone a chemical and a physical change, and they are no longer clay. From now on, you refer to this as ceramic because it is not clay anymore. It has gone through the physical and the chemical change to make it ceramic. Bisqueware has specific characteristics, if you'll say, that are different from the other life cycles of clay. As such, it's really porous, and when you paint your glaze on it, it's going to soak it up. Let me give you an example. So let's say that I have this glaze here, and right now you have a newspaper in the middle of your table. You're going to have 3 or 4 bottles of glaze on your table. The first thing you're going to do is put your finger on the top and shake it up really good, because there are particles in the bottom that you're going to want to mix. When you put your glaze on, it's going to be kind of sandy, and that's what you want. To make this a food safe surface, which for these sculptures, it doesn't matter if it's food safe or not, but for in the future, if you're making anything that's going to be functional ceramics, like a plate, a bowl, a mug, you're going to want a food safe surface. For these, it just makes them look really pretty, and it makes them look a whole lot better if you have a nice glossy, glassy surface to finish them off with. So the first thing you want to do is to shake your glaze. There are some glazes, and they should be at 1 or 2 tables, that are color burst glazes or crystal glazes. And what happens with these, if you look at the label, this will tell you what color the glaze is going to be. In this case, the background is going to be white, but somewhere between 800 and 1,000 degrees, something magical happens. And that is, there's crystals in this glaze, and you want to paint on those crystals. They'll be like little hunks. They settle in the bottom. That's why you want to shake this really good and dip your brush down so that you can get some of these crystals in onto your piece. What happens between 800 and 1,000 degrees is that these little crystals make a sound like poof. That's what they do. And when they burst into color. So this white is going to have crystals of blue and crystals of a kind of a Granny Smith green onto them. There are different ones. Some of them don't have labels to show you, but we do have some test tiles of how it's going to look when the piece is finished. Okay, so basically you're going to paint 2 good coats. Why do you need 2 good coats? Well, that's a good question. I have a couple of test tiles here. This is a color that's called blush, and this is a color that's called, I think we have pumpkin and mandarin. And you can tell right here where the number 1s are. This is what it looks like with 1 coat of glaze. The number 2 is what it looks like with 2 coats of glaze, and the 3 is what it looks like with 3 coats of glaze. I would like for you to glaze 2 good coats on the inside and on the outside, so that your piece will not be transparent, which means that you can't see the clay through the glaze. Okay. This person would glaze on the inside because there's an inside here that's going to be seen. So you're going to glaze 2 good coats on the inside and on the outside. However, you are not going to glaze on the bottom. And there's a specific reason for that. The next time you go into a grocery store or Walmart or wherever they sell plates, mugs, saucers, go and pick one up and look on the bottom. The bottom may be painted, but there will be a little rim that's raised that will not be painted at all. That's where the rim sits onto the kiln shelf. Now, commercial ceramics like you buy at Walmart, mugs, plates, saucers, bowls, are finished the exact same way that we are finishing, except for they're done on a much larger scale. So let's say that you get some paint on some glaze onto the bottom of your piece. Oops. What you're going to want to do is, there should be in your classroom a few sponges that look like this. You're going to go put it in the bucket or wherever your teacher has you rinse it. You're going to squeeze it out really well, and you're going to want to rub this until it's off. Because, again, at that magical temperature between 800 and 1,000 degrees, whatever glaze touches, it fuses to. So the only way that you're going to get this piece off is with a crowbar, and it's going to ruin your piece and it's going to ruin the kiln shelf. That's why if your piece has glaze on the bottom, it will not be fired. It will be returned to you exactly like it is, exactly like you have glazed it. If you want a good glossy, glassy finish and for your piece to be finished, do not have glaze on the bottom or anywhere that the ceramic is going to touch the shelf. Now for today, what you're going to do is, you can see that there are, in your classroom, there are newspaper in the middle of the table and there are bottles of glaze. You're going to gently make sure that, first of all, sitting at your table, that the glaze lid is on good. Then you're going to shake it. You're going to take it off and lay it right beside its bottle. Do not paint out of the lid. That's a no-no. Don't do that. Also, there are brushes at your table, one for each color. Use the brush only on the color that you start with. This glaze is pretty expensive. These are about 20 bucks a bottle. Some colors are a lot more expensive, and we want to make these last. So you and your piece are going to move. The glaze and the brushes will not. Again, you and your art piece will move around when your teacher says to go and start painting. You and your art piece will move around to whatever color you need. If there's a person at that color that you need, go to another color until they're finished. You and your piece are going to move. The glaze and the brushes do not. Don't take a blue glazed brush and stick it into a white container. You just contaminated a whole bottle of glaze, and we're going to have to throw this out. Again, it's all part of taking care of the art supplies and taking care of what we have. If you are going to layer glaze, how many of you have ever colored your hair and decided that the color didn't look very good and tried to cover it up with another color and found out that it didn't work? I've done that, and I suspect that some of you have done that too. Well, the same thing goes with glaze. If I paint glaze onto my piece and I decide after I've painted it, oh shoot, I don't think that I want this glaze this color, guess what? You're not going to be able to layer it with a red over this blue and then expect that the blue is not going to show, because the blue is going to show. It's going to bleed through. As you can tell right now, I don't know if you can see it, but this glaze dries really quick and it's almost completely dry on this surface. Again, you're going to put 2 good coats on, wait until the first one is almost dry, and then paint on a good second coat. If a color is wrong, if you've gone, let's say that you've gone and gotten color on the eye and you don't want it on there, again, these sponges are really handy. However, these sponges work only to a certain extent. So I can scrub that off on the eye. There, this is a broken piece, by the way. I can scrub that off and then I can go back and paint it again. The only time this doesn't work is with black. When you paint on black, there's going to be a black tint there no matter what. So be really careful when you're painting on black or dark colors. Oh, another thing I need to tell you is, do not pay attention to the color of the glazes in the bottle. Pay attention to what is on the label. So this looks like a burgundy or a red. Actually, this color is called Pagoda Green. That's right, it's called Pagoda Green, and this is one of those color burst glazes where it's going to have some cool colors that burst on the surface, but this is going to fire a really bright, nice green. Why does it do that? Well, without going into a whole chemistry lesson that you don't want to hear, just trust that a chemical and a physical change happens, again, around 1,000 degrees, maybe a little hotter, and this is going to turn to green. There's a whole chemistry, a whole science behind glazing, and a whole science behind making glazes. And I could teach a whole year's classes on making and testing glazes, and it would be really in-depth. However, we can't do that here, so you're just going to have to trust that what is on the label is the color that the glaze is going to be. And trust me when I say that this is going to fire and it's going to turn green. This is a medium blue, and there's a nice medium blue that's right here that tells you exactly what this color is going to be. Again, with this crystal glaze, a lot of the labels will tell you what they're going to look like. Some of them won't. We have test tiles for some of the colors Some of them you're just going to have to trust if you're going to paint your piece that color. So we're going to paint on 2 good coats, inside and out, to review. We're not going to paint on the bottom of the piece, and you're going to clean off if there's any on the bottom. You're also going to clean off if there's something that touches the bottom. Here's a good example. This is a really cool piece. It's an octopus, and the bottom is glazed a little bit. Now she can, or whoever this person is, can glaze the bottom of these tentacles, or whatever you want to call them, on the octopus, because when I set it down, it's not going to touch the kiln shelf. Only the bottom's going to touch the kiln shelf because it's rounded out in such a way that the tentacles are not going to show. That's fine to paint the bottom of these. But if it's going to touch the kiln shelf, do not paint glaze on. The glaze you're going to find when you paint it on is going to leave a really sandy texture. And there's a reason for that too. What happens to sand when you heat it at a high temperature, or what happens to sand when it's struck by lightning? Think about that for a minute. And I'm sure you probably already know the answer. If you said that it turns to glass, you're right. Which is why glaze has a sandy texture to it, because there are, among other things, particles of sand in here, among other really cool other things. And when it's heated at a high temperature, it's going to come out with a really cool, glossy, glassy surface because it's been heated up at a high temperature and turned into glass. So there's a whole science behind all of this glazing. Now, for cleanup. The first thing you're going to do is, when your teacher gives you the direction, you're going to go and you're going to put your piece on the cart. Make sure the bottom is wiped off. Put your piece on the cart. You're going to come back to your table. There's going to be a rag on each table, a clean, wet rag. And at this point in time, you have not put up any of the glaze. It's really important for you to put this rag over the glaze and wipe off that lid. You're going to wipe off really good. Then you're going to take this lid. You don't have to wipe off all of this in the middle, but you do have to wipe off the edges where the threads are for it to be threaded onto the lid. And after you make sure that both of them are wiped off good, then you can put the lid on. Why do you do that? Well, the reason we do this is because the glaze will dry overnight and we won't be able to get this lid off in the morning. So here's a really expensive bottle of glaze that we're not able to use. So wipe these off. At that point in time, you can take this rag and you can, if your teacher directs you to wipe off the table with it, go ahead and wipe off that table. Put the glaze wherever your teacher directs you. Some teachers will have you leave it here on the table. Some will have you put it on the shelf. Whatever your teacher says to do, follow that direction. If you're going to leave it on the table, put them in the middle of the table. You're going to take the brush and you're going to put it in your teacher should have a coffee can or some kind of container of water. Put it brush side down. Don't leave the bristles sticking up. That's just crazy. Put it down into the water. The last thing you're going to do is you're going to take this newspaper, wad it up, put it in the trash, and get a wipe and wipe off your hands or wash your hands, whatever your teacher directs. I think that's it for the glazing lesson, so let's get to work, and I want to see those finished glazed pieces, and I know that they're going to be beautiful. Thanks, and have a great day.